Come join us each week as we dive into topics about the joys and the struggles of motherhood. By no means are we experts. We're practically flying by the seat of our pants, or should I say, mom jeans. On this podcast, you will find a judgment-free zone where we discuss not only the best parts of being a mom, but the not-so-glamorous parts too. You can expect unfiltered, real mom talk, humor, grace, and a sense of sisterhood. What makes our podcast unique is that we understand there's no one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to being a mother. We're not going to pretend that we know everything too, because we definitely don't. We just want a place to share our stories with you. Thank you so much for tuning in to Mom Jeans, trying to fit into motherhood.
All right, welcome back to Mom Jeans, the podcast. We took a week off, so we're fresh and new with new thoughts and ideas. Let's do a quick check-in and see how everybody's last 2 weeks have been. We had 2 birthdays in the last 2 weeks, so Sierra's birthday and Weston's birthday. So anybody want to kick that off?
So Weston turned 1 a week ago, and so we went to Hawaii to his grandparents' condo, and my parents flew out too, and my sister, and so we celebrated there, and it was a lot of fun. He got a lot of FaceTime with his grandparents, and I got to sit by the pool and relax a little, so it definitely felt like a vacation for me, and we just had a lot of fun. He loved his sweet potato cake. Thank you. I think, Lisa, was that you who originally mentioned that? He loved it. Of course, my family was a little skeptical at first, and when they tried it, they're like, okay, it's not that bad. And I'm like, see? It was pretty good. He loved it. And it was funny because he picked the strawberries off of it first and ate those. And then he dove into the cake, and he really enjoyed that. And even though it wasn't, full of sugar, he still went into a little cake coma, like started to slow down and like in a trance. So that was a lot of fun. And then, he was kind of walking before we left, and so his favorite thing for the grandparents to do was to walk him around the area we were staying by holding his hand. So I think that really did help build up his leg strength, because now he was walking further distances, and then he started getting confident of pulling himself up and then walking on his own to certain spots.
Yeah.
And a couple of days ago, he literally stood up on his own and walked. I'm like, oh my gosh. Yeah. So it's been awesome. But it's also like game over. Like, now I need to have full attention, and I'm finding new things I need to baby proof. But it's been really fun.
All downhill from here.
Yes. Yeah. And so it's been really fun. And he's starting to point at things, and I realize he uses more as I want. Like, I want, and then he'll point. Like, I want outside. I want to pet the dog. Like, it's so cute. So, yeah, it's been fun. And he had his checkup today, and that went well, because before she was worried about his weight gain when I was still breastfeeding. And that boy, he just eats more than me sometimes. So she was glad to see he was starting to go with a curve, because there for a while she wanted to run tests and things of that sort. So we had a good week. Yesterday we traveled back, and he did really well, but we were all so tired because we took a red eye from Hawaii. And so Ryan and I were up over 24 hours for sure, and I can't sleep on a plane, and I was holding Weston. So it was just, I was so tired when we got back, but yeah,
nice.
Things are going good.
I don't want to pay for Hannah to have her own seat on a plane, but man, it's tough when they get close to that like bigger mark and they want to move and they want to wiggle around, and yeah, it's hard to hold them, and they get heavy and need the back support.
Yeah. And then worried about him kicking the person next to me too. I was lucky on the longest flight. I had a empty seat, but he kept sliding down and getting closer to the other person. I'm like, oh, but.
How long were your flights?
Well, on the way back, it was 4.5 hours because we went to San Diego, but we had 2 layovers on the way back because it was still quicker getting home, because we normally fly to Seattle, but the layover was almost 8 hours. And so I was like, no, we're going to do 2 layovers with like 50-minute layovers. So we still got home. Yeah.
I'm in that camp too, for sure. Shorter layovers, I don't care.
So the rest were a couple hours, so they weren't too bad. And he was so tired, he napped. He didn't fight it too much.
And same on the way there as well. Like he did well both directions.
On the way there, he was a little more, he didn't sleep. It took him a while to fall asleep from Seattle to, almost said Florida, Hawaii. He was just fighting it. So he ate, we played games. So it took him about 2 hours to go to sleep. And it was late too. It all worked out.
Dang. We still have an episode coming up about traveling with children at all different ages because it's such a saga at every stage. My week was good. As you can hear, my voice is half there, but we're still kicking on. So I'll start with my lows. Right now, I've gotten Sierra's daycare cold that she gave our family 2 weeks ago, and mine is now. I thought I'd snuck through without a cough, and I was like, oh, made it through just fine. And here we are. I've got a pretty gnarly cough, so hopefully I don't cough too much on this episode, but took a little cough medicine before this. But of course, anytime you take medicine pregnant, you just feel guilty, right? At least I do. Just there's so many questions. But hoping that helps because I was up at 2 a.m. this morning and I could not fall back asleep from coughing. So that was rough. And then the other bummer news is yesterday we took Sierra for her 1-year appointment. All was good. We dropped her off at school around 11. And then at 1 o'clock, we had a call saying, Sierra has pink eye. So can you come pick her up? And so luckily we could start drops right away. And it cleared up like pretty much instantly, which is great. But it was just an unexpected day of having to keep her here and 2 working parents. It's just complicated. And
When can you bring her back?
Tomorrow, luckily.
Oh,
so
good.
it's 24 hours after drops. So we were worried it was going to be an all week thing. But both the doctor and our school said she could come back after 24 hours of starting the drops. So,
good.
Which is good.
How does she tolerate taking the drops?
There's a lot of things she freaks out about. The drops have not been that bad. So she's doing okay. She do 2 in each eye, and she's just been kind of able to do it. We're still using bottles for milk, which I'll get into in a minute here. But so we'll give her bottle while we put the drops in, and it's going just fine. Nice. So, yeah.
I've had to give my dog eye drops, and it was horrible.
Awful.
It's horrible.
Yeah. I hate eye drops.
I do too.
Generally, yeah. But so those are the lows, but let's talk about the highs. Two big wins, in my opinion. 3. So the first one is, as you've heard me talk about in some other episodes, like Sierra was really struggling from terrible butt rash, diarrhea, eczema, awful sleep, all the above. And we've spent time down in Phoenix with a GI specialist. We've tried a couple different things, and we have completely eliminated cow's milk and dairy from her diet. And it has been the most transformative experience for her and for us. And it's just been phenomenal. Like
Yay!
within like, it takes 48 hours to get lactose out of your system. And so after those 48 hours, like her poops turn normal, which, always TMI, but I've never been so happy to see Play-Doh-like consistency. And all I could think about was like Leeah trying to explain by like the poop is better than breastfeeding poop or bottle feeding poop. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about, Leeah, because the poops I've seen at this stage, but then the ones now, I'm like, wait, this isn't that bad. It comes right off. It's still, I'm still team breastfeeding and bottle early feeding poops because the smell is so much better. But I understood your argument better than ever. But her eczema from her back is completely gone. She's sleeping much better. Like her attitude changed. Like it's just been like the only word I keep using is transformative. So I'm just so happy we found that. So we've just been navigating the right, one of her words that she knows is milk. She says it all the time and demands milk. And so it's one of her favorite things, which is so ironic in this whole state. But so we're not quite getting her. Well, we haven't really been able to get her off of any sort of milk like product. So we're first tried almond, then we tried a lactose free cow's milk. That didn't go great. I think she's also allergic to the lactose and the protein. And then also, so now we're on oat milk. Per the pediatrician, it's closer and it has more calories and fat and protein. So we're using oat milk, and it's approved by school because it's not a nut product like almond milk was. So long story short, yeah. So we had to get off of almond milk because of the daycare's requirements.
Oh my god!
So no nut products are allowed. It's not even peanuts. It's all nut products. Wow.
Correct. No nut product.
None at all. Like I texted Michelle and Lisa one day, and I was like, I was just trying to make some food for Weston, and almost went to put almond milk in it, and realized that I can't even like cook with it.
Really?
Oh my gosh.
So I was
that's sensitive.
I was so focused on getting her off of cow's milk that like almond milk was we tried. We were laughing. We have 7 different types of milk in our fridge. We tried everything. She would like the first day of getting her off of cow's milk, and then at that time formula was awful. It was like one of the worst days that we've had since. But then it's gotten so much better. She didn't take any milk. We tried Ripple, we tried soy, we tried oat then. We tried all of them. And then, but so she finally liked almond milk. And then I was like, no, wait, we can't bring that to school. So anyways, long story short, we're on oat milk now, and she seems to be liking it. And one step at a time, and then we'll work on getting off of bottles at some point. But I'm just going to take this win while I can.
Michelle, does anybody in your family have a lactose allergy? Is there any sort of
intolerance to
genetic?
Yeah, genetic history or anything of that sorts?
The math makes sense, right? Like no. So I did an Everlywell scan on myself, and the one thing that came back was cow's milk. It was saying it was like it's not easy for my body to digest. As a kid, I never drank milk. My family's joke is that like you hated milk and it made you feel sick, but if you put chocolate in it, it was fine, right? But it's so like, I have had a complicated past with dairy, but my family's from Wisconsin. I eat a lot of cheese. It's still there. And then Ryan has had his things too. So the good news about dairy is like a lot of kids grow out of it. It's just a lot for their bodies to take right now, especially with our history.
What's an Everly scan? I've never heard of that before.
I did one once too.
It's at home, like
home. Yeah.
Blood test.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
You can test all sorts of things, but you can check for food intolerances.
What did yours come back with anything, Michaela?
I think the most reactive thing that I had on mine, which is even still pretty mild, was cashews, surprisingly, which I don't really like cashews anyway. So that's fine. But everything else was really, really low reactivity. I think the highest thing on the low scale were eggs and chicken, which I eat a lot of both. And eggs wasn't too surprising either, actually. I expected that to be a little bit higher, but that was it. I thought dairy was going to be on there for sure.
Leah, have you done one of those?
I haven't.
You've probably done all
I've
the
had plenty of actual medical
office
blood tests that I don't need to do the at-home ones.
When I did mine at home, you have to follow the rules and do a finger prick in the right spot, and you have to get like the blood droplets into this little tiny thing. And I messed up the first time around. I panicked, and my husband walked in, and there was just blood everywhere. Like, I'm fine. Everything's fine. This is how it's supposed to look. Just give me 5 more minutes and it'll be cleaned up. But anyway, interesting test.
So we'll dive into some allergies at the end here, but that was one win, was that transformative experience with dairy. So I'm very excited about that. And then the other one is it was Sierra's birthday. So we threw a hole-in-one party down in Sedona, which was so much fun. We had little games. We had good food. Like, so many people got to come, and Lisa and Michaela were there. It was just beautiful, beautiful day.
The food was amazing. I think I ate, I'm not kidding you, I think I had 6 of those Rice Krispies, and I was like, I kept looking and I was like, oh man, I shouldn't have had so many people aren't going to get them. And then I saw the guys all standing around them, just housing them. And I was like, okay, I don't feel as bad, but they were so good. Everything was so good.
Shout out to Sugar Masters Las Vegas. My friend Alyssa makes the most amazing cookies and Rice Krispie treats. She's based in Vegas. If you live there, she will just make you the most beautiful cookies you've ever seen. You won't want to eat them until you do eat them, and you're like, wait, these are the most delicious cookies I've ever had. So highly recommend. It was
I'll link to it.
It was just a beautiful day. I just like left that day being like, my cup is so full. Like, you know, so many people I love in one spot. Again, the weather just like behaved perfectly. The day before was rainy, and it was awesome. And I think just every time when you're in Sedona, you just get good zen and vibes. And we were so lucky to have both sets of Sierra's grandparents there, and both of her aunts and uncles, my brother and his sister, and their partners. So it was just awesome day. And then we also did a baby blessing the day before, so that was a really beautiful spiritual baptism of sorts that we can always talk about more at some point. But it was a really, really cool day for her birthday. And then the other thing we did at her birthday is we did a sex reveal for baby and found out that we're having a boy. So, so Lisa was right all along. I was shocked. I was looking down expecting to see pink, and because we did a golf ball to continue with the hole-in-one theme, so we did an exploding golf ball. We also did something like that at our wedding over Zoom, which was kind of a fun to keep the party going on that. And I was shocked that it was boy. So exciting stuff. It's going to be great. And so, yeah. Long story short, the last 2 weeks have been extremely eventful in many good ways, and then now many sick ways. So that's where we're at now.
And did you say you guys decided on a name, but you haven't shared it yet?
We shared it with our family, and then I guess Ryan and I haven't decided on like our game plan for telling the world yet. So maybe I won't reveal it on this podcast first, but I'm sure it'll come out at some point soon. But we do have a name, so we knew the name when we had Sierra. We were gonna, if it was a girl, it was Sierra. It was a boy, it was blank, and and our minds have not changed since that, and so it worked out well.
I was making a mental list today of all the names I think it could be, so I'm excited to find out if I was even close.
You guessed Breck last time. It's not that. I'll give you that.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Good guess though. I actually brought that back to Ryan. I was like, "Are we sure we don't like Breck? We did live there, Breckenridge. It was kind of fun, but we're going with our gut on this one."
Yeah. So spring break was last week, which was an awesome opportunity for us to kind of take a little trip as a family. The daycare cold made it home with us as well. So Steven started to feel a little bit under the weather on the Saturday of last week, but was a total trooper. We made it down to Phoenix as according to plan, and then we did fly out to California on Sunday to go to Newport Beach and hang out by the beach. And we went to Disneyland, which was super, super fun. I consider this being my huge win for the week because Steven wasn't overly excited about the idea of taking a 1-year-old to Disneyland. And I just kind of kept pressing for it. And so he said, yes, we'll do it. And then when we came home, when we were laying in bed, when we were finally back home, I said, what was the highlight of your trip? And he gave me this little side smirk and smile. And he looked at me and he was like, Disneyland? It's like, yes. So Weston had a great time. It was very sweet. It was, I have some friends who have been at Disneyland this week, and so they reached out to us and was like, what's your tip for Disneyland? And I said, set your expectations low. And we did that, and we had an amazing time. So it was a lot of fun. And I managed to stay healthy all last week, and then kind of got the cold on Friday and have been recovering since then. I think I might be like a day or two ahead of you, Michelle, in my recovery process, but it sounds like we have very similar symptoms and experiences there. So
I was just going to add, we took Sierra to Disneyland on our, well, still on maternity leave. So she was very young, like 3.5 months old. And same exact thing happened to us. Like we were so hesitant to do it. Mainly the reason we did it is my brother's girlfriend works for Disney, so we could actually get in for free, which was such a beautiful thing in itself. But it was just so, I mean, obviously it's so family friendly, and you just felt like the it's so efficient, right? Like the parking garage to getting, the transportation to get in there. And then if your baby's crying, so what? Like it's so open, everybody's kids are crying, right? It just was a very stroller parking, and like it just ended up being like such a happy day. And so when I asked Ryan his highlight of the trip too, he also said Disneyland. So couldn't agree more.
That's awesome. Yeah, it was a lot more fun than I expected. And I also was amazed, Stephen and I were talking about it all day, how many very, very, very young babies were there. Like, and I think, the perspective that I was trying to walk through is like a lot of people plan a very long time in advance to go to Disney. And so if you book a trip a year out and then you get pregnant, you're not canceling that trip. You're going with an 8-week-old or however old that baby is. So kids of all ages.
Are they free before they're 2? Free before they're 3? Something like that? I remember my girlfriend talked about that.
I think it's 3. Yeah, if we would have had to pay for Weston, we would have been even more hesitant to go. But,
sure,
having him be free, and he was deathly afraid of the characters. That aspect of it did not go well. On A Small World, he just stood there and he waved at all the characters and was dancing along with the song. And he actually fell asleep on one ride, which was amazing. But yeah, it was definitely recommend it. It was a lot of fun. It was totally worth it.
Did he travel well?
He did. He slept the whole flight out there. I mean, granted, the flight was 57 minutes, so not very long. And then on the way back, he didn't sleep at all, but he did handle it well.
That's great.
He loves those like puffs, those like dissolvable puffs of air is what Stephen and I call them. But he loves them. And so if I just sit them there in front of him, he ate it for like 30 minutes and then just kind of, he definitely ate much larger of a serving than he probably should have, but
they're, like you said, they're air. They're,
whatever keeps them entertained.
They taste like nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm glad that he didn't sleep on the way back, because I kind of wanted to see how he would do on a flight where he wasn't sleeping and not moving around, because we have a trip coming up again in May, which is a significantly longer flight. But, I think, as we've mentioned before, each time you do travel, you get a little bit more confident. That's kind of where we at. Like, it felt good for him to be awake on a flight and everything be okay.
And I think
that's great.
Long term, it's like when you think back on the trips, you don't think about the travel. You don't think about the traveling. You think about the memories you made there. So they end up becoming worth it.
I don't know. I don't know that I'll ever forget that flight to France with Hannah.
Well, you're right. That's a whole different ballgame. 100%. 100%.
I mean, it definitely, like they say, you don't remember pain quite like the pain. And I definitely remember how miserable I was in the moment, but it was worth it for the trip for sure. Yeah, so Aubrey started a new daycare on Monday. Today is Tuesday. And, transitions to new places are always difficult. So she didn't sleep much, not eating a ton, but I'm not surprised. I hate to say it, but this happened with Hannah too, and it made her sleep better at night. So I'm kind of hoping the last 2 nights she put herself to sleep really well. And she only woke up once during the night yesterday, and usually it's 3 times. So I, not to say I'm taking advantage of her being exhausted, but hopefully it kind of sets her into a new way. So yeah, we got really lucky. We could get into this daycare. They opened a second infant room because their demand was so high. So we got super, super lucky and got in, and I'm excited to move into this transition of Hannah went here when she was little until she was 16 months. So we're familiar with it. We know how it works. And I said, it's so funny because I hated it when Hannah was there. And now I'm like, oh, but it's way better, than what we were in. And I know it. And I think I just wouldn't have liked anywhere that I took Hannah to in the beginning, because you never think anybody can take care of your babies like you can. So Yeah, so that's exciting for Aubrey. Man, she's just the cutest. She just loves to smile at us and adores Hannah too. Like always is looking for Hannah, and as soon as she finds Hannah, she's smiling at Hannah. And Hannah's been doing this thing lately where she like lays on her, and I'm like, Hannah, be gentle, be gentle. You have to be gentle with her. And she just like squishing her belly and like, doing all these things. And Aubrey's so patient with it. So super lucky. And then Hannah, man, it's so funny. So I grew up a little afraid of insects and animals and stuff like that. And I'm trying really hard to make sure that like I set Hannah up to not be that way. So we live in the mountains and spiders are a thing here, and we get spiders in the house from, now and then. And so the other day she saw a spider and she was fascinated. She's like, oh, wow, spider. And I was like, awesome. So I like ran to go do something, and I came back like 30 seconds later and I said, Hannah, where'd the spider go? And she goes, mouth. And I was like, you ate it?
No.
And she goes, yep, mouth. And I was like, all right, like, okay, well, we don't eat spiders. And she said, spider Band-Aid? And I was like, oh, they don't make Band-Aids small enough for spiders, unfortunately, Hannah. I'm really sorry. It's like, so like going to extremes of like, I was so afraid of spiders, and she loves these spiders, but she just doesn't understand her strength. But it's very, very funny.
How
very
big
cute.
of a spider are we talking?
Tiny, like they're tiny spiders. Like, I can't even go that small. They're so tiny, like smaller than my pinky nail. Yeah, no, little guys. And she had one earlier in the week that she saw, and like, she's like, oh, I take spider outside. Well, she crushed it on the bottom of her shoe, and like, she doesn't understand death, obviously, right? So like, she's like, I take spider outside. I was like, okay, you can take spider outside. The spider's very dead. But yeah, it's very like, it's fun, like watching her brain like process. And that's when she was like, spider Band-Aid. I was like, no spider Band-Aid. Very sweet that you think that, but yeah. So we're having, but with both kids, kind of our challenges. Aubrey has terrible cradle cap, and it's amazing all the opinions that are flying in about that. So, we're working slowly on what to do. It's crazy because she has terrible eczema, so we don't want to bathe her much because that really irritates it. So, but that doesn't help with the cradle cap then. So it's like trying to balance that. So we tried baby oil tonight. We'll see how that goes. And then Hannah's a big time thumb sucker, and her thumb is raw. She has this huge gash in her thumb. And so we've started taping it up, and it's like, are we messing with something because it's like constantly taped, and everybody's like, oh my gosh, what happened to her? We're like, no, I'm debating doing that bad tasting nail polish. I talked about that before, but I can still taste that from when my parents did that to me. Like, I'm so scarred from that. I was 4, to be fair. Like, I remember that. She wouldn't remember it at this stage, being only 2, but it's like a battle I'm having because it is a self-soother for her. Like, she loves it, and it gets her to relax and to settle down in rough situations and also go to sleep. So, it's just a struggle. Neither of my kids would take a pacifier, and I'm going to keep trying with Aubrey because, at least he can take the passy away, whereas can't take the thumb away. But yeah, so that's what's going on here. Michaela,
I have to ask,
what's going on with you?
does Hannah do the thumb in the mouth and the finger up the nose, or just the thumb in the mouth? Okay,
just the thumb in the mouth. Yeah,
let's try and leave it at that.
We've started to say, do you need to go take a nap? Because if your thumb's in your mouth, it means you're tired. And she'll like take it out, and then she puts the other one in. I'm like, geez.
Well, that's
darn it.
She's got her sleepy
going
one
in
and
the right direction.
Her sleepy one and her awake one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And we're, like we said, we're still working our way through potty training, but we're getting there. So I'm enjoying the stage we're in right now, and it's good. Everything's good.
Good. Yeah, my last few weeks have been eventful. I know I don't have kids, but I do have a fur baby that I've mentioned, but I haven't talked much about. Our little mutt, Tommy Pickles, he started having seizures in January, was his first seizure, and so far he's had 3 grand mal seizures that we know of. And we took him to see a neurologist, a specialist down in Phoenix last weekend. And it was a lot of money, more tests. I think he's had every single test that they could think to do for a dog with seizures. And of course, every single one has come back negative. So a lot of money for peace of mind, I guess, if you can even say that at this point. But part of his testing, he had to go under anesthesia for an MRI, and they also did a spinal tap to look at his cerebrospinal fluid to see if there were any signs of infection or anything else like that. And it messed him up really bad. So Sunday morning after the appointment, they told us no activity restrictions, no food restrictions after 24 hours off anesthesia. And so we took him out for a hike on Sunday morning because he was whining and seemed pretty energetic, and he had a great time on the hike, running around in the snow for more than 2 miles. And then as soon as we got back to the house, he just crashed, and he was in bad shape for like 2 or 3 days, just really out of it, very listless. I mean, he was pacing all around the house. He just couldn't get comfortable. He would whimper every time he would go to sit down or lay down. He would try and put his head down and immediately snap back up, seeming like he was really dizzy or it hurt his head to lay down. So it was actually pretty scary for a couple days. And then, of course, I had to leave for a work trip, which never feels good. But I guess the high for my week is I got a phone call from my husband this morning saying that he felt like Tommy was totally back to normal and was begging to go on 2 walks today. So he got 2 walks, including some off leash time and some playtime at home. So excited to go home tomorrow and hope that he's still feeling like himself. But we now officially have an epileptic dog that is going to be on medication for the rest of his life. And that's my mom story for the week.
That's a bummer.
It is a bummer.
I mean, it's like you said, it's nice, I guess, nice to have a diagnosis and know that nothing worse is there, but it's also like, man, he's just a pup.
Yeah, it's just a pup.
He's so young.
So young. I know. How are you and Bryce feeling about it?
Like, we just don't understand why the universe keeps giving us sick dogs, but it is what it is. We have the means to pay for these ridiculous tests for him and to kind of go out of our way to figure out what's going on and to take it seriously. Whereas, maybe somebody else would just say, oh, it's just a dog, whatever. And so nothing we could do about it. It sucks. It's a really big bummer. He has to have pills 2 times a day, and he is not good at taking pills, and it's not temporary. So it's rough. I think that our biggest concern with it is leaving him with somebody else when we go out of town. He'll more than likely be fine, but we never know when he's going to have a seizure or what could trigger it. And so the thought of putting that on somebody else doesn't feel good, but we can't stop living our lives just because of it too. So it's a bummer, but you know what? He's a great dog. He's, like I said, our fur baby, so he's worth it. We'll take care of him for as long as we get to.
Totally. I will never, when everyone's like, someone will say, like, I don't mean to compare dogs to a kid. And I'm like, please do. Like, for me, especially with our dog and especially her as a puppy, I'd argue was harder than Sierra in a lot of ways. And so there's a lot of comparisons. The love is there in so many different ways too. So it's emotional, it's tough, it's a lot.
It is, and just like little kids, they can't tell you what's wrong. So it's all a guessing
Right.
game. Sierra couldn't tell you, hey mom, this milk is making my stomach really hurt.
Right.
You just have to guess and figure it out.
I did have a moment. I was like, oh, both our kiddos are at specialists in Phoenix right now.
We did get insurance for Tommy because of our situation that we dealt with our last dog, that we had to put down at the ripe age of 6 years old due to a rare cancer. So shout out to Pumpkin Insurance for holding it down for us. It's been, unfortunately, well worth it. But enough about me. Let's talk about some birth stories.
Okay. So where do I start?
At the beginning.
Yeah, take us
In
take
the
us take us
beginning,
from the start, Leah.
there was a due date of February 22nd, which was a Wednesday. And I absolutely, it's funny because during our pregnancy, I was so attached to that due date. Like, I loved the number 2/22/23. I just thought it was like a cool date. And so I was really hooked on my due date, and I was really convinced that that was the day that Weston was going to be born, because it just all sounded perfect. As we were getting closer to his due date, I think I mentioned this in the episode where we talked about third trimester, I did everything under the sun possible to try to go into labor naturally. Still to this day, I never want to see a date again. I did curb walking, my birth ball. I did stretches, yoga, spinning babies, all of it, to get to that natural birth. That was something that I really wanted. I had a birth plan laid out. It was really important to me, for some very personal reasons, that I wanted to have a natural birth. So we had a high risk pregnancy, so we had additional appointments leading up to the birth, and there was additional monitoring and things of that sorts, and he was doing fine. Weston was comfortable. He was in good shape. But by the time I hit 40 and a half weeks, our doctor up here wanted to do an induction. Because something with, I think, Lisa, you might be able to chime in on this, but something with the altitude and a couple other factors, I believe, that they don't want you going very long past your due date up here. Is that correct?
They told me that basically for some reason the elevation affects the placenta, and the placenta quality goes down fast after 41 weeks. That's why they don't let you deliver up here past 41 weeks. Is what I was told. I don't remember fully, but that's what I remember.
Okay, so maybe something with thinner or less oxygen. I don't know. Way too much science, way above my head. So anyways, the doctor had scheduled our induction. It took me, a couple days to kind of work through the grieving process that I was going to be induced. I really wanted that moment of, oh my gosh, I'm going into labor. And so I'd still held on to that up until the very moment that we were like on our way to the hospital, because I was excited about that. I felt like that was something that you see in the movies, and it's so climatic. And so I was a little bummed when, they said that we were going to have an induction, but I was like, what, at the end of the day, I'm ready to not be pregnant anymore. And so we went in, and they admit you here for an induction at 7 p.m. And because I'm just a squirrely type person, I was like, I'm going to work that day. Like, that'll be my last day at work. I was like, I can't sit still. I don't want to be by myself and just thinking about things. And my boss was like, relax, like, take the day off. Just enjoy the day, going for your induction, don't work. And so I didn't end up working that day. And so we were driving to the hospital, went in for the induction, and I'm not going to remember every detail because there's a lot of my hospital stay that I actually don't remember at all, that I completely blacked out through. But we went in, and they told us that the first method of induction was a 12-hour process, and it was called Cervidil, one of those two things. And it's essentially a medicated tampon that they insert inside of you to try and get you to start having contractions and to start to go into labor. So we knew right off the bat that, okay, well, it goes up there, nothing exciting is going to happen. They hook you up to the monitors, start monitoring you, and it's just kind of a waiting game. Our doula did come with us when we were admitted to the hospital. And so she was there hanging out with us just in case anything did happen, and any excitement started going on. So the 12 hours passed, and they did do a cervical check, and I hadn't dilated at all. But I had been measuring active labor contractions, which is interesting because I wasn't feeling them. And I wasn't on any pain medication or anything at this point. And so the nurse would keep being like, are you feeling that? I'm like, no. So I don't know what was going on in my body, but I was, and you could, you could look at the machine and see them.
It's coming. Yeah.
So it was really interesting to hear that, because she was like, okay, did you feel that? I'm like, no. So then the doctor came in and said that we can try a different induction method, which was 3 pills over the course of X number of hours that would, hopefully get you to start dilating and move the process along. By this point, Weston's heart rate was starting to have some variability, and they weren't super worried about it, but they had me make sure I was only in certain positions, because certain positions would really bother him. The frustrating part of that was that being on the birth ball really bothered him, but that was the most comfortable for me. And so that was really interesting. Throughout this whole process, they had me hooked up to all of the monitors. We went through that induction method. Nothing was happening. I wasn't making any progress. I wasn't progressing. So I can skip to really going through 3 more induction methods and still not progressing, still not dilating.
Over the course of how long?
That would have been over the course of 51 hours. And
Wow.
I was not progressing at all. It was 8 o'clock at night one night, and the doctor came in and said, hey, we're not progressing. We're still watching his heart rate. It's not dangerous, but it's not as stable as we would like to see it. He's like, so basically at this point you can rest for the night and we'll come back and try something again in the morning. And I was like, okay. So I got myself all comfortable and took a nice bath and was relaxed a little bit in the hotel room. At this point, it felt like a hotel room because we were there for so long. And we actually sent our doula home. We were like, you can go. We're not going to do anything tonight. We're going to wait until the morning and then try and start the process all over again. So what the doctor had proposed is that we would start with the Cervidil and go back and work our way through all 5 induction methods again if we wanted to continue down this path. So that night it had started snowing, and our doula went home. We're chilling in the hotel room, again, in the hospital room. And I will say, though, the birthing suites here in town are very, very nice. Like the labor and delivery unit is very nice.
Can I ask really quickly? So when he said to you, hey, we'll just start the whole process all over again in the morning, what was your mindset? Like, I'll do this as many times as I have to, or what? How were you? Where were you with everything?
I was like, at some point, it's got to happen, right? Like, we're not just going to keep going through all of this. So I was just like, okay, whatever. Like, I was really trying to, I think, go one step at a time.
Okay, good.
Because I was still so hopeful that I was going to go into labor naturally, that this was all just going to happen. And so I was like, whatever, took a nice bath, used my essential oils, hung out, watched some TV. But I was pretty exhausted because when you are in the hospital that much, they are monitoring you and checking everything and poking and prodding and doing all of that. So I think over the course of those 51 hours that we had been there at that point, I had probably only slept like maybe 3 or 4 hours total. So that the doctor left at like 8:30 p.m. And then at 11 o'clock, a nurse came in pretty unhinged. And she's like, the doctor's on his way back. And we're like, oh, okay. That's probably not a good thing. And so that's when Stephen and I kind of looked at each other. At that point, we were like, this probably means that something's wrong and that we have to go in for a C-section. So we called our doula, asked her to head back to the hospital. We had about 15 to 20 minutes, I think, before the doctor got back to the hospital. But I want to make the note that between the time our doula left the hospital at 8:30 and coming back at 11:30, there was 10 inches of snow on her car.
Wow.
And when the doctor came in, he came in still in his snow boots. And he explained that Weston was having what's called late decels. And so, Danielle, I know you had shared that Weston's heart rate was dropping during the contractions. Well, Weston's heart rate was Weston's heart rate was dropping after the contractions, which becomes more emergent because they don't recover. They expect the baby to recover after the contraction. Like they expect the heart rate to have some variability during the contraction and then recover. But when it's dropping after the contraction, they're not actually recovering. And so that's why the doctor, they had monitored enough of Weston's heart rate to see that that had happened long enough for it to become fairly emergent and for us to go in for.
Were you still not feeling contractions at that point?
Mm-mm.
Wow.
I felt over the whole time, I felt probably 3 to 5 really intensely, but I was measuring contractions the whole time. So I think that was really just weird. I also was measuring active labor contractions when I was in the hospital in November before he was born, when I was pregnant with him. And so they checked me for preterm labor when I was like 26 weeks, I think, at the time. So I don't know. I've always had really heavy cramps. I don't know if there's anything that has to do with that, but I only felt probably 3 to 5 really strong contractions.
That is wild.
Thanks for also explaining D cells. I've heard it a lot on Grey's Anatomy, but I appreciate you actually explaining it in layman's terms.
I appreciate my doula explaining it in layman's terms because the doctors come in and they're like, this is what's happening. We gotta go. And then all of a sudden, I think what was a little nerve-wracking about it. So Stephen and I had our conversation. It was like, okay, this is not the way we wanted it to go, but we need a healthy, happy baby, healthy, happy mom. So we're going to do what we've got to do, right? We came to terms with it, came to peace with it pretty quickly. But then all of a sudden, they swarm in your room, and there's a couple nurses, there's a couple doctors. They're asking you to sign all of these things that you don't have time to read and acknowledge, and you have no idea what's going on. And you're just like, is my baby going to be okay? Am I going to be okay? I've never had surgery before, so this was terrifying to me. So yeah, the doctor came in, told us, we got to go. They're going to prep you. They're going to take you to the OR. And so they took us to the OR, and I go back and I laugh because it's just so small mountain town that everybody was in there in their winter gear. And they actually had to pull a doctor from another floor to be the co-doctor with our doctor, because the doctor that was supposed to be there couldn't get in because the snow was so crazy and heavy. The anesthesiologist was like, I made it here, but I had to go and dig out my brother's car because my car couldn't get out of the snow to get here. And the reason that's funny to me is because Stephen had said during our entire pregnancy that Weston would be born during the heaviest snowstorm of the year. And it was a year that we were having a ton of snow, like every other week. And so we kept thinking like, okay, well, this is going to be the week. This is going to be the week. And sure enough, Weston did end up being born during the biggest snowstorm of the year. I blame Stephen's ability to manifest things. But, I just remember being on the surgical table looking and seeing the doctor's snow boots with the little booties over them, the surgical booties or whatever they're called. So
when I think of your
so
labor,
we went in for the season.
I was gonna say, when I think of your labor and your story, that's the visual I always get in my head, is like the snow boots and the booties and stuff. I didn't see it, but I'm like clearly visioning what that looks like.
Well, and theater of the minds for everybody listening, our doctor also looks like Santa Claus. So it just kind of adds.
Yep, he does.
Adds to the picture.
That's hilarious.
Santa Claus in snow boots doing your C-section.
I don't even know I didn't know what your doctor looked like until you just said that, but I pictured a guy that kind of looked like a slim Santa Claus.
He's not slim.
Okay.
He's not slim.
Just in his straight Santa Claus. Okay.
He's straight up Santa Claus, but he's short.
Okay.
A short Santa.
There are bigger Santa Clauses out there, but
I don't think he'll be listening to this podcast. I'm not too worried.
I don't either. I found him to be very kind and jolly, and we really, really enjoyed him. We thought he was great. So, the C-section, I guess what's so weird to me about the C-section is how fast it happens. Stephen and I had a theme song for like our whole IVF journey, and then our pregnancy. We had this one song that we played like all the time, and the anesthesiologist was like, "Okay, you need to come over here, play some music, put it in her ear, so you don't hear what's happening." And so as soon as they started the surgery, Steven started the song, and it was like a minute and 45 seconds until Wesson was born, and you heard him cry. And I'm like, that's insane to me. Like,
Wild.
how fast that all happened was so bizarre. Especially like, there's this viral TikTok going around right now of a school showing med students an actual C-section.
I saw that.
Or pre-med students.
They're like,
really
"Ooh."
funny. They're all questioning what they want to do with their lives after seeing it.
Yeah.
So yeah, we were really lucky. The C-section went great. It was fine. I think the first thing out of my mouth after they pulled Wesson up and I could see him, I was like, what the F just happened? Because I was in so much shock. And, spare the details of everything that goes into a C-section, but it's loud and weird and, a little bit gross. But
yeah, you feel a lot of tugging, right? Did you feel the tugging?
I felt some tugging, but the thing that I vividly remember the most was the table shaking and going back like
Oh, no, yeah.
Going back and forth. Like,
I think I forgot that.
That was the worst part to me.
Ugh.
And I know it's different for everybody's experience, but to me, the fact that like the whole table was moving, I was like, what is...
Why?
They asked, I don't know. They asked us if we wanted a see-through screen so that you could see what's going on.
Yeah.
And
Heck
What?
no.
Oh yeah, you didn't know.
I
They
didn't
ask
know
us.
that. They didn't.
Mhm.
No.
Yeah. So
No.
they asked us. They asked us if we wanted a see-through screen so that we could see what's going on, and then if we wanted, or if we were okay with any students observing. And I said no to students observing. I didn't want anybody else in the room. I felt that there was enough people there. And I said no to the see-through screen. And now, because of like the way I felt things, I wish I would have watched.
Yeah, I would think if there's any type of surgery happening, the last thing that you want is a table that moves.
Oh, they move. Oh, yeah.
Is it like
Yeah.
yanking the baby out? Is that what?
Well, I'll get to it in my birthing story if you want to hear some more of that, what happens in that.
And maybe I know that we might have some special guests on some other episodes too that can maybe speak to what they witnessed, but interesting. Okay. So we have a surgery, a mobile surgery.
Yes. So Stephen didn't look. It was funny. I do remember the anesthesiologist being like, okay, you can look now, because they would like hold Wesson up just high enough to where you could see Wesson, but like Stephen wouldn't see anything else. And then Danielle, I know you kind of said that Ryan was like, okay, do I stay with my wife? Do I go with the baby? And you guys had a much different scenario, but Stephen even said the same thing, because when they took Wesson, they took him over to a different side of the room, and I was still being operated on. And Stephen's like, well, do I go with the baby or do I stay with her? And I was like, go with him. And then they brought, Wesson over, and we were able to do some skin to skin in the OR, which I thought was really nice. It wasn't long, but it was a couple minutes. And then
Logistical question. Are you laying flat when this is happening, or are you propped up? So when
laying
you're doing
flat.
skin to skin, is he on your chest while you're laying down?
Yeah. So
this way though.
Yeah.
Right? Horizontal.
I was covered up to here, and then
like mid-chest.
Yeah. And really
like upper.
The picture that I have is Wesson's head is in between my collarbone and my chin, essentially. So a very, very small area that they were able to do it, but I appreciated that they did and that they made some effort there as well. And then I think it takes them a while to get you all stitched back up. Like it's so easy to cut through everything, and then the artwork happens when they're playing Tetris with all of your organs.
And they cut horizontally, right? Across your
Yeah.
lower.
It's in the bikini
Yeah, like
area,
below your bikini line.
which is nice because now you don't see it when you wear the bathing suit. And I know it wasn't like that for everyone back in the day. They cut you straight up and down.
Yeah, my mom, she had a C-section and she's had other lady bit surgeries, and she's got a gnarly scar from her belly button down to her bikini area. And so I always thought for the longest time that that's how they always did C-sections. And I thought
It was for a long time.
Yeah, but now they've figured out, hey, actually we can do this in a spot where it's not as visible later on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I was in labor for 56 hours. I never dilated. I was having active contractions the entire time. And then we ended up in the C-section, and Wesson is here. So
Yay
that's
for
that's
Wesson.
really, really my birth story. We stayed in the hospital for 2 days afterwards. You know, there's lots of medication and things that come along with it. Michelle and Lisa came to the hospital to meet Wesson and to see us, and I have no recollection of that whatsoever. But yeah, you know, our doula was great because she did stay a little bit after the birth, and she helped explain to us what happened and why we had to go through what we had to go through. And so I appreciated the post-care birth with her, post-birth care that she provided with us as well, which was really nice. And I was just, you know, I was really happy that that he was healthy. The surgery seemed to go as normal as a C-section possibly could. It was, you know, nice to not have to stress about his heart rate, because while we were going through the induction methods, we knew exactly every single time when the nurse was going to come in, because we would look at the monitor and you could just see the direction that the numbers were going. And Steven and our doula and I would look at each other and would be like, 5, 4, 3, 2. Knew you were going to be here. And so that happened for 50 hours. And so, you know, it was nice to actually just start stressing about, is Wesson breathing now? Is he eating? Is he, you know, pooping, peeing, all of those things.
How did you feel mentally after the fact, like getting over that thought of, okay, now I know for sure that I did not have the birthing plan that I wanted? Like, did all of that just kind of go out of your mind because it didn't matter because you had a healthy baby at the end of the day? Or was there still some part of you that was like, man, I wish?
I grieved for a couple weeks, and our doulas really came in clutch there, because she actually came over and sat and talked to us, I think on 2, maybe 3 separate occasions, and helped me through that, because I was like, you know, I was really bummed that I never got the, oh my gosh, we're in labor. Like, I really was sad about that. And then I was like, and I was really sad that I didn't get to do it naturally, that there was medication involved. I have a very, very challenging relationship with medication, and I'm very, very sensitive to medications. And so then on top of that, when I found out that Lisa and Michelle came to see us in the hospital and I had no recollection of that, I was even more upset, because I was like, what else don't I remember from that time period? And, you know, the doula was saying, some of that is just going through birth regardless. Like, the days after birth, many women don't remember things. There's details that are missed. There's things that, you know, it's a blur and stuff. So it was nice to kind of get that reassurance that it, you know, wasn't because of X that happened. It was, you know, a combination of a lot of things, and that the expectation isn't to have remembered every single detail of everything. So no, I did have some grieving over that. I was pretty bummed out. But at the end of the day, I mean, I do still remember that I have a C-section, because I still have like some pretty aggressive sensitivity in that area. But, at the end of the day, it's not something that I really think about often.
So I have a follow-up question. You said that you were in labor for 56 hours. Were you able to eat during that time, or did they not allow you to eat because you're admitted in?
I was able to eat because I never took any pain medicine, or they had shared with us that it was after the epidural because they don't want you to aspirate. And so I never had any of that. And so I was able to eat the whole time, which was great. But however, because of my food restrictions, I could only DoorDash food, and because the hospital could only provide me grapes and a Rice Krispie treat was the only food options they have, which is amazing to me for a hospital.
Yeah.
They did get better though, because when I was in the hospital in the fall of this year, I was actually able to eat some pasta. So the options got better.
They have those Udi's gluten-free cookies now too. Brandon and I ordered like 15 of those. They were so good. The snickerdoodles.
I don't know that they had those in November when I was there this year.
Oh, when we were there in November, they had them. Yeah.
Maybe
awesome.
they had them in the cafeteria. They didn't have them on the menu, I don't think.
Probably.
So yes, thankfully I was able to eat. We took well, and a funny thing about that too is that Stephen and I are like, okay, we'll take snacks for like 2 days. We'll take clothes for 2 days. And yeah, joke's on us. We ran out of those snacks real fast. Our clothes were pretty grimy by the end of our stay. Yeah, I was thankful that I was able to eat and drink. And the thing that kind of sucked was because of his heart rate variability, I wasn't allowed to be off the monitor at all. And at one point of it, it was so aggressive that they wouldn't even let me leave the room. There was other points where they would let me hook up to the portable monitor and I could at least like walk around the room and get out of the bed and walk around a little bit. And finally, after like begging and pleading the nurse, she was like, okay, I'm supposed to watch you for one more 15-minute cycle, but it's been 8 minutes and here you go. You can go in the hallway. So like we walked to the cafeteria and that was like our big adventure. But that was a struggle. That was a challenging part, to not be able to really move around as freely as I would have liked during, I'm like a dog. You have to let me outside. I can't sit still. Like I've got a lot of energy. I need to move around. And so being confined to a bed with, cable TV was tough, but that's okay. So that's it, 56 hours of labor, the biggest snowstorm of the year, and a happy, healthy baby who was deemed Bigfoot, and the cold baby because his temperature was low on one reading. And the whole time we were there, they're like, oh, this is the baby with the big feet and the cold baby. And we're like, okay.
And as we heard on a previous episode, the least jaundiced baby ever.
Yes. So.
Was it Kristen that, did she go to the hospital and shovel out your truck, or did she shovel your driveway before you got home? I can't remember.
Yeah, she shoveled our house for us, which was so nice.
Yeah, we were concerned about how you were going to get out of the parking lot and how you were going to get into your driveway. So
seriously.
Yeah, shout out to Kristen.
So they actually, in the winter, closed the top level of the parking garage at the hospital, so you can't even park up there. So it's only covered parking for labor and delivery, which was great. So we were covered parking, but yeah, we did have an army of support for sure, helping us have food when we got home and shovel out our driveway and all that.
That's awesome. Well, thanks for sharing your birthing story. Nobody has any further questions. Let's get into our hot topic for the week. We are going to talk about allergies. Michelle touched on that in the beginning of the episode, that they're dealing with allergies with Sierra. And I have 2 very eczema crazy kids, and they have flares, and we've found some of their flare issues, what happens with how those happen. Leeah has allergies herself, and let's just hit it. Michelle, you want to?
Sure. I mean, it's such a wild thing to navigate. You know, you're navigating so much in the first year anyways with the baby, and then all of a sudden you're starting to think about the first time you try peanut butter and all the common allergens. You're kind of on guard. But you're also hopeful your kid doesn't have allergies. Most kids don't. And you just don't want to necessarily go there. So with Sierra, there was 3 times when like my gut kind of said she could have a lactose issue, or dairy, I should say dairy issue, because as I've learned, you can really be allergic or intolerant to 2 parts of cow's milk. So it can either be the lactose or it can be, the dairy protein. So that's why there's actually 2 types of milk that you can buy. So there's a lactose free milk, which eliminates the lactose, and then there's an A1 milk, which eliminates the protein but still has lactose. So it's cool that we can actually do that is centralize what it is. So we're still not 100% sure which of the 2 or both that she's intolerant to, but when she was 6 weeks old, 6 to 10 weeks, she was extremely colicky. And just crying all the time, super fussy. It was a really, really hard time of our early days. And I remember thinking, like, I wonder if it could be the dairy that I'm ingesting. I don't have a ton of it, but I do like half and half in the morning with my coffee. I do like cheese, right? Like, I don't make an effort to cut it out. And then, but talking to our lactation consultant and confirmed by the GI specialist this week that it is very rare for babies that young to actually be intolerant, especially through breast milk. So we didn't cut it out at the time, fine. And things that seemed to get better. And then at 6 months, when we transitioned her to cow's milk based formula, she also was a little bit, didn't react 100% great, but after a week or two, she seemed to be okay. But, really over the last 6 months, we've just noticed, we just thought, we have another baby here to compare to. We thought like 5 to 8 poops a day were normal. We thought the fact that she blew out her diaper was comical, like twice a day, right? Like, and our first daycare that we had, she was just joked Sierra had very high velocity poops. And so we just went through this like life that, I was like, my girl's got a great gut, great GI system. Like, she just is cranking out the poops. And I was like, all right, so it's fine. And then we started at a new daycare, and of course, someone who sees a lot of babies around that age, and she went through really 2 to 3 months of just constant diarrhea. Her diaper rash got worse than ever. Like, we're talking blood, we're talking blisters, we're talking like, just it was a traumatic experience for her to get her diaper changed. She was in pain. It was red. No amount of baths, no amount of cream, balm. I've tried every brand. Maybe I should do a whole blog post on like the different brands of diaper paste. But anyways, nothing was working at all. And she just seemed uncomfortable and extra clingy too at those points too. And then I was out of town and for a work trip, and then she actually started puking a couple times at daycare. And of course, they're worried about the flu or something. But when we've talked to the GI specialist, kind of in retrospect, he actually thinks it was a lot of indigestion just because her stomach couldn't get settled. She's also had a really hard time eating solids. Like, maybe 1 in 10 meals we'd sit her down for, she'd eat it. If the rest she would just throw on the ground, she would put her mouth and spit up. And like, again, my first child, I don't have another child to compare to, is like, thought some of that was normal. But I just think her poor stomach was just so upset she wouldn't eat. But she was gaining weight. Like, there's all these different factors. So long story short, her birthday weekend, as fun as it was, I could just see how upset she was. Again, her diaper rash, her back was breaking out with dry patches and eczema everywhere. So we came back and we're like, let's just cut out the dairy. Let's just do it. And so, as I was describing a little bit earlier, the first day was just horrific. Like, she was crying all day. She was so hungry. She still wasn't eating food. She had all this lactose in there. Her butt had still a lot of rashes. And so we, Ryan and I wanted to give up like 4 or 5 times. And, one of the words she knows is milk. And so she's saying, milk, milk, milk. And she's just so sad. And every time she's asking for it, right? But we were like, okay, we have to be strong. This is the best thing for her. She'll never remember this. We have to get to at least 48 hours when the lactose is out of her system. So we pushed through, and like day 2, she ate a little bit more. Her poop was still all over the place. Day 3, things started to firm up, but day 4 and day 5, like, to use the word again, it was transformative. Like, her back healed up instantly. Her diaper rash went away. She went down to 2 poops a day. The texture was not diarrhea at all. So like, it was just a remarkable transformation to see how much this dairy was just really eating at her insides. And so we ended up going to see a GI specialist down in Phoenix, and I'm really happy we did this lactose test before we got there, because it was able to isolate the issue and find out what was going on. And, he did a full exam. He checked for all these different things. Another gross thing about it was we ended up having to do 3 stool samples. So scooping out the poop, sending it to a lab. I did it. My husband did it. My mother-in-law did it. So we've all earned our keep, I guess. And we've tested for every bacterial thing, norovirus, all the different things, C. diff. Like, she actually had a little bit in there, but most babies do. I can get into that later too. Long story short, they couldn't find anything wrong with her poop. And then we were able to, after all these tests, really isolate the dairy allergy. And so we are now on oat milk, we're trying to get to less and less ounces a day. But it's going just overall well. We're just going to let her live in this new era of happy body and happy poops and all these things right now. But it's been awesome all across the board. I'm like, wow, our diaper cost is going to go
That's what I
down
was
because
just
we're
going
not.
to ask. Like, your diaper and wipe supply, I'm sure it just seems abundant
Yeah.
right now.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Like, we were looking at our stash and we're like, we're usually going through this box once a week. And so that's going to be improved. Our like formula cost now has gone away. So, that's the financials like don't even matter to me in comparison to how much happier and she is. So anyways, allergens are crazy, and I just feel for every parent going through it, especially ones with the anaphylactic issues like nuts and things to that effect. I don't know if anyone else has much experience with that, and Leah would love, to hear about your personal experience and even kind of what you shared with me today, because Sierra's also been sick a lot, and you're making a notion to saying you wonder if her immunity is actually going to go up now that we've identified this
Yeah, her
allergen.
body's not constantly fighting what's being put into it. I have a naive question.
Yeah.
Is there dairy products, lactose, casein, whatever, in formula, in powder formula?
Most of them are cow's milk based. Yeah. So yeah, there are. And, I've like the amount of things that have dairy in them are just wild. A lot of breads, a lot of baked goods, like they use butter, they use
Mm-hmm.
milk, like that. It's just the list of those things. And then, of course, all the cheeses we have in this world, like, and then the obvious places for it. So, our recommendation is, the good news is, like with lactose and dairy, that a lot of it can they can grow out of it. So I'm hopeful again of all the things for it to be like, we can tackle this, we got this. But he is hopeful that she can have it one day soon, and so we're going to completely eliminate for 6 months and then check in, and then we're going to start with the basic things like baked goods. So what's cooked milk or cooked dairy, and then we'll move into like hard cheeses and then soft cheeses, and then straight up milk if we ever get there. So we'll cross those bridges when we come, but that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah, allergies are nuts, pun
Pun
intended.
intended.
We actually have skipped over cow's milk entirely. We were trying to give it to Wesson, and it was making him so upset. He can tolerate yogurt and cottage cheese. He loves those things, but the actual milk was making him very uncomfortable. And so we with the blessing of our doctor and the other things that we shared with her that we put in his diet on a regular basis, she said, you can skip over the cow's milk and just give him water. So we've been giving him water, but it's been challenging to get him to drink enough water. So we're working through that. But yeah, Michelle, as you said, I have some pretty severe food restrictions myself. And when I was a kid, I was frequently in and out of the hospital. And when anybody would get sick, I would get it to the nth degree and so much worse. And we just could not figure out why until, I found out that the autoimmune disease that I have. And once that was diagnosed and my lifestyle changed, everything in my life changed. And so I am very hopeful for Sierra that, by identifying this thing that, as Michaela said, is her body's attacking and using all of its energy to try and attack and get this toxin out of her body, that, her immune system will hopefully go up, like it happened to me as well. So I'm hopeful that that's another positive change that you guys see in this process.
That'd be awesome. How old were you when you were diagnosed with that?
I was in my 20s by the time that
Oh.
was. So I think I was 22.
Wow, it's a long time to go.
And my question is, Leah, and we've talked about this before, but with your dietary restrictions, do you have reservations on giving those things to Wesson, or do you want him to be exposed to them to try to get that? What's your theory on how to do that, how to handle that?
Yeah, so it's tough because we don't have any of those things in our house. And it is statistically unlikely that he will have the same problems that I do. However, it is genetic in my family. So there's kind of the toss up there, right? We do know for certain that he doesn't have one of the issues, because we actually did get him an allergy test as well when he was like 5 months old, I believe it was, because he was breaking out in really bad rashes, and it was always after I ate nut products. And he was still 100% breastfed at this point, but I was nervous that, it could be passed through the breast milk. And like Michelle said, they said it's very low and unlikely that it could, but there's still a chance. And especially if a child has an anaphylactic allergy, it is likely that it would show up as a rash through the breast milk. And so I was worried about that. And then so I guess he was 6 months. And then when we first gave him coconut, he broke out he had a horrific reaction to the coconut. Just his face was puffy. It was all red, and it was almost immediate. And so the pediatrician's guidance was to not give him coconut again and to go get an allergy test. And coconut's a very, very rare allergy. But it is technically a tree nut, and tree nuts were what we had been worried about for the couple months before that. So we went down and saw an allergist down in Phoenix. And honestly, I don't know why we just don't do an allergy test with all the kids, because it was so easy. It was so quick. It was so easy. It wasn't invasive. It didn't bother Weston at all.
What do they do?
So they do the panel, and I can't remember how many they tested for, but I think it was like 20 things. And they just do these, this, like, what, a tenth of a second of a scratch for each one, and then they were done. Now the hardest part is that they have to sit-ish still, where you can't touch their back for 15 minutes while you're waiting to see if there's any sort of reaction to the scratches. In the grand scheme of things, it was so easy and so quick, and the doctor was awesome, that I'm just like, yeah, 10 out of 10, definitely recommend this for peace of mind. So he came back free and clear of any of the allergens. So that was comforting for us. So I've given him on 2 occasions wheat and bread, but I haven't, and he didn't have any reactions or anything to that. Hasn't had anything reactions to any other things. So cautiously optimistic that he won't have the same issues that I do, but there is the chance. And we've tried to expose him to all the foods possible, but again, it is limited with what we actually have in our house too.
That makes sense. I think that's I don't know what I would do in that situation either. That's really difficult. So that's awesome that you guys are trying that.
I was gonna say, did anyone else have any techniques for introducing allergens, and how they went about it?
We were told to do one a week. So we did with Hannah, we did peanuts, like I did peanut butter. And I made sure not to do eggs that week at the same time because I think those are the two common ones. I think that's what they told us at the pediatrician. That's what we did. How about you guys?
Yeah, I think we followed that pretty closely as well. We never gave him shellfish.
Yeah, we did something similar too. And then once we went through all the allergens, I gave her. There's this company called Ready Set Food, and they actually introduce all the allergens. So we did do, like, after we did it once, we did a bowl of oatmeal every week that had it all in there too. So just to continue exposure.
There's a company, and I don't know who told me about it, but they had puffs, and they had like 32 allergens in them.
Yeah.
And you're supposed to give them the puffs, like, I think it was like once a day or something to keep them exposed to it, but they were so expensive. And I was like, oh man, I know you're worth it, but this is crazy. I don't want to do this. So I quit on it.
Yeah. I mean, have good things to say generally about the Ready Set Food. It was affordable. It lasted so long just to do, like, and again, she wasn't eating that much, but like one little scoop of oatmeal a week was a nice way to do it.
Mark Cuban Shark Tank product right there.
It is.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. My kids' allergies we've noticed is scented detergent and dryer sheets. Dryer sheets specifically are very bad for them and make them flare like crazy on their eczema. But it's so funny. I think I was telling Leeah that I grew up being like, man, my skin's so dry. I'm so uncomfortable. This is horrible. I could put like pounds of lotion on. Nothing would work. And I've come to realize that mine is also dryer sheets that makes me go crazy. And they have that too, unfortunately. And, it's hard to explain to people who have always used that detergent and always use dryer sheets. Like, hey, we're just going to bring our own draft, or we're going to bring our own, we use Branch Basics, and like,
I do too.
we're going to use our own stuff. Yeah, we love it. I love
stuff.
That stuff.
I've got rid of
Leah. Leah got me introduced.
That's amazing. I got rid of all my scents. Like, I don't even have candles in my house anymore. I'm like went that
same.
extreme because I would get a headache and I would feel sick from like the scents and stuff. So yeah,
same.
Shout out to Branch Basics.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I really like. It's tough, like telling my dad, like, hey, can you stop washing like our sheets and everything when we come down there? And he's like, I don't understand. Like, I'm like, I know you don't understand. Just let me do it. I'll do it when I come down there. But it's really hard to watch your kids go through, like, the eczema flares are so bad. And you're like, oh man, like Hannah's amazing where I don't know. I like have had those Grey's Anatomy. Thank you very much. Those, thoughts of like, oh, does my kid have the no pain thing? Because she would go through and like her splotches are huge and no big deal to her. Aubrey is definitely different. Aubrey gets very agitated by her cradle cap and by her eczema, and so we're like, all right, we gotta do the best we can on trying to make sure she's clear and free of that. So I'm a little bit more nervous about her and food allergies than I ever was with Hannah. So. We'll see. We'll get to that when we get to
I
that.
had horrible eczema as a kid. And I don't even know how many dermatologists, I was young, so I can't recall the details, but I remember going to the doctor multiple times to try and figure out how to calm my eczema. And I ended up having to use this thick, like Crisco thick steroid lotion cream. And it was the only thing.
We use that.
Yeah, it was the only thing that helped. And it's miserable. And to this day, I cannot use scented lotions. I can't use scented laundry products. I remember my sister had scented dryer sheets. Dryer sheets are fine for me, but they have to be unscented. So the only thing that I'll use is free and clear for both my detergent and dryer sheets. But I remember my sister did my laundry one day. I was home visiting her, and I put on a shirt or whatever that was part of that that load that she washed, and my throat started to swell up. And I was like, am I getting sick? What's going on here? And it happened a couple more times, and I realized that it was just the dryer sheets. Whatever scent was on that, just my body did not like it. So to this day, I'm still very sensitive to scents and to scented things that I put on my body. So
my doctor or the pediatrician told us that most kids grow out of eczema by the time they're 6. And I was like, man, I really hope that, because I, like talking to my mom now, like unbeknownst to us, I had really bad heat rash a lot. Like I would break out into heat rash all the time. And now looking back on it, you're like, I wonder if that wasn't so much heat rash as it was maybe a reaction to something, right?
Sunscreens is another one that I will go into a full body rash. Visiting the in-laws in Hawaii, I learned that the hard way, especially on spots where my bathing suit rubs, so like on the back of my neck. So I have to be very, very, very particular about what types of sunscreens that I use. And even still, if I use the same thing over and over and over again, sometimes my body starts to reject whatever that sunscreen is, and I got to change it up. So yeah, it's a battle.
Well, I appreciate your sunscreen stash at the in-laws. I use the face one because I like the zinc, sunscreen that's good for the wreath and for the environment.
Yes.
And for your skin.
You look very sun-kissed, like a healthy glow.
Oh, thank you. I think those lights are making me a little more red. I might actually be this red. I got a little sunburnt, but it's fine.
So just on the fragrance thing, this infuriated me postpartum. I'm very sensitive to fragrance as well. Don't have anything in our house that's artificial fragrances whatsoever. Big fan. Branch Basics. Thank you for everything. May have potentially converted my mother-in-law when she was here on the last trip, which was exciting.
Whoa.
So all that to be said, when we were in the hospital and at the first pediatrician's office, all of the literature that they gave us and all of the things they told us, they said don't use anything with fragrance on your babies. Fragrance should stay away from the babies. And I went home, and some of the baby wipes that we had been given and the baby lotions and all of these other baby products all had fragrance, and I was so wound up about it. Like, okay, if the American Association of Pediatrics is saying don't use fragrance on babies in any capacity, why are all of these baby products being pushed on us that all contain artificial fragrances? I will get off my soapbox now, but it absolutely infuriated me.
Absolutely.
This is going to, being who we are and where we live and what we do, we're very cognizant of that kind of stuff, I think. I think we live in a spot that's very cognizant of the environment, of the things we're doing, the things we're putting into our body, because in other areas, I think, of the country that they don't maybe have the resources to be educated into this kind of stuff. Like you said, Leah, so I got a pamphlet given to me from our pediatrician at Aubrey's 4-month appointment, and it's preparing her for solids, and it's a double-sided sheet. And she went through this double-sided sheet and she started crossing off all of these things that don't apply or not right, or we've proven aren't correct anymore. And I'm like, you literally 3/4 of the sheet you just X'd out. Why are we giving this sheet out to anybody anymore? Like, why is this even happening if we've learned all of this stuff? Like, why, we are lucky we have the resources to go get our children allergy tested. Think about the people that don't have those resources. And like you said, Leah, like a Johnson & Johnson is making this product, and you were raised to say Johnson & Johnson, of course, the baby stuff, right? It's just so, so sad. And
it's all a money game for them. It's how much money they can make. They don't actually care about your baby, to be honest.
But see, that's what makes me so mad about it, is because somebody shouldn't have to invest time and resources in finding out that, okay, well, this baby wipe brand shouldn't be used. Like, do the right thing. I mean, like, I just don't. that's what made me so mad about it, is that, I understand that there are plenty of people and areas in the world where you don't have access to information like we do. And so I felt so lucky and fortunate that we got the guidance that we did. But then I go home and I see these products that are touted to be the best. And why are we putting other families through that? Like, I don't know. It just really wound me up, because I'm just like, this isn't right. And we shouldn't have to worry about this stuff. But
Yeah, I feel like we could have a whole episode on this, because even like the diapers, like certain diapers have like certain chemicals in them,
Totally.
like made of plastic. So, like I've been using the Kudos brand, which is like 100% cotton.
Mhm.
But again, they're not cheap if you're comparing them to the like mainstream diapers that you see at the stores. And so not everyone has that, I don't know,
no, and I
knowledge
think you have to.
or, yeah.
I think you have to pick what you can fit within your lifestyle. Like, there's some things that you can concede on and some things that you can't, right? And that's a choice for everybody to make individually. But I think that everybody should have the ability to make the choice for themselves.
Or these companies just need to do better.
Yeah, well, it's a whole thing. The list,
as you said, Danielle, they're looking for their money. I don't think that's coming anytime soon.
The list of products we allow in the U.S. that are banned in many other parts of the world is just outrageous.
Cheetos, man.
This is the moment for us to shout out one of my favorite apps. I think Lisa uses it too, but
oh yeah,
Yuka, Leeah, Michaela, Danielle, are you using it? It's free. There's a free version, but they also have a small fee. It's a nonprofit. I scan everything I purchase. There's so many things that are hidden. So essentially what it is an app where you can scan the barcode of a product that you're going to purchase. Sometimes ignorance is bliss, but like, I'm really at this point in my life where, like, especially being pregnant, everything I put in my body, I want to make sure doesn't have these harmful additives, doesn't have all these different things. So what it does is give you a score from 0 to 100, gives it a red, orange, yellow, green dot next to it, so it makes it really user friendly, and you can see what's in your products that you're purchasing, and it allows you to make an informed decision on it. But I remember scanning my entire bathroom when I first got it, went down quite the rabbit hole, and so many products that I've been using my whole life that look great. Unscented Lubriderm, for example. I think scores. It looks medical. It looks official. The branding looks great. I'm pretty sure when you scan it, it's like a 3 out of 100. Mm-hmm. It has all these harmful chemicals in it. And it's just, especially as you start thinking about, like, what are you giving to your child? What are you giving to yourself? You start really just, thinking about these things, and allows you to make a decision. So anyways, Yuka, Yuka is the name, but we all, like, I think the only caveat I would just say is, like, we all need to be balanced with these things. It can drive you crazy thinking about all of it. So it's like, you have to stay sane. You have to take it in strides. And advice I was given, it was like, everything you've been probably using it for years. Really thinking about when you're replacing a product, picking another option. And I found what it really does is, like, 9 times out of 10, I can find a similar price point product, but with better ingredients. And sometimes that's at Walgreens even too, right? But it allows you to make those decisions and not drive yourself into a spiral. So anyways, just wanted to talk about our friend Yuka, the app.
Awesome. Well, I think we've covered a lot in this episode, and as always, enjoy talking to you all and enjoy our recordings because it's really fun. If you'd like to give us a follow on Instagram at Mom Jeans the Podcast, on our website, momjeansthepodcast.com. Yeah, I think that's it, right?
And you can email us.
Oh, yeah. And you can email us at hello@momjeansthepodcast.com. And we'll see you next week. Looking forward to it.
Let's hope I sleep past 2:30 this morning.
Yeah, get some rest.
Yes.
everybody.
Yes.
And that wraps up this week's episode of Mom Jeans, trying to fit into motherhood. We hope that you enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much for listening.